Modern motherhood isn't a highlight reel. It's a shit show. I'm Hannah Rodger, mother of many and community builder.
And I'm Lisa Hodgson, and I help women create imperfect homes that actually work.
The Motherhood Shit Show is where we get real about the mental load and the chaos, the moments that make you laugh so you don't cry, or cry so you don't scream.
Each week, we unpack today's load, what we're carrying physically, mentally, and emotionally. We share stories from the working mum trenches and wrap up with a quick shit tip of the week that you can actually use.
It's more than just a good moan with your mate. If life feels a bit heavy, the Motherhood Shit Show is here to help you feel seen, bring a bit more joy, and cut down on the crying in the pantry.
Alrighty, let's get into it.
Thirsty.
How are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Got my tea. Just asked you offline if I could drink my tea whilst we're recording. We decided yes. We're both going to drink tea.
My tea's kind of like, it just blends quite nicely with my top. Sorry, you can't see that if you listen to this it's on Spotify or Apple, but yeah, we're all in the pink today, aren't we?
We are indeed. So, my friend, what shit's going down for you this week?
Oh, mate, it's all about menopause, right? Right in the thick of it. And, I was reflecting the other day about, in the early years, and this is, I think, the thing they don't really tell you about motherhood up front is, but, I remember spending a lot of the early years, like, wishing for them to be over. Is that bad?
No, definitely not. No judgment.
I'm having a pang of guilt now, but do you know what I mean? I was just like, please, I just want to get to a point where like I can have a full night's sleep and I can actually sit down and have a rest at some point in the day. So, you spend a lot of time, getting to that point and, it's probably when your kids hit like double figures in all honesty. Sorry, Hannah. Things, they do get a lot easier. So, I can remember sort of thinking there was like definitely a period of about 4 years where it's like, this is heaven. They can dress themselves, they can even like get food in the kitchen, like they're more self-sufficient, and occasionally you can even leave them in the house and go out without them, which is bloody awesome. So those years are amazing. And then comes like the dreaded teenage years, and I think we're going to go into that in a bit more, but then you get all the back chat and so many other friendship issues, and I'm just going to say there's a lot going on for teenagers these days, right? So those years are challenging. So you're waiting for that period to sort of pass, and then you think this is going to be great, I've got it all now, it's all sorted, the end is near, and then bang, you get hit with the sleepless nights again. Well, I certainly have had quite a few of those in sort of later perimenopause. In all honesty, Hannah, I don't even know where I am in that thing because I'm so well medicated and don't have any periods anymore due to medical means, the Mirena. So I don't even know, but definitely been having the sleepless nights. The waistline, like, hello waist, are you still in there somewhere? Just haven't changed anything, but it's just slowly disappearing. And then there's also that thing of like, have I got early onset dementia? Because some days I literally cannot remember what my children are called. So I have been having a bit of a rough time with it. The sleep thing has been really bothering me because I'm going to touch this subject lightly, and I think I'm going to talk about this in some future podcasts, but like sometimes like your feelings towards your husband change, or maybe they've always been like that way, but I cannot stand the sound of air coming out of my husband's nostrils at night. It is driving me absolutely bananas. And literally, I can fall asleep and then I hear and I'm like awake. So it's been causing a bit of tension. And my husband, bless him, he tries really hard. And so he said, right, I'll go out. I'm going to get some of these like breathe right strips. And they do actually work. I have to say they've been working really well. The only problem with them is they just seem to disappear. So he puts one on in the evening and we wake up in the morning like, where the hell is it gone? And they're not in the beds. They're like nowhere. And then like, you're pushing the trolley around Woolies and all of a sudden there's the breathe right strip on the trolley. I don't know. Go figure. How about you, Rog? What shit?
Sounds like I've got a lot to look forward to.
Mate, I think I've got a bit of a hot flush coming on right now. Feeling a bit warm.
So I am 10 years behind you almost, and I am constantly wondering whether I have early onset dementia because I also can't remember my kids' names. And then I remember that it's been a very long time since I actually felt rested. And the
That
sleep
probably, I
deprivation might have something to do with it.
think so.
Yeah. But for me this week, no nose strips this week, but I am all about reducing food waste. So I used to think I had quite good eco credentials before I had kids. I think as a lot of people do. And now I've got three, age 5 and under. Like a lot of food just gets like put in the bin. I cook it, they don't eat it, gets put in the bin. Put it in the lunch boxes, they don't eat it, gets put in the bin. So I pre-made 2 weeks worth of sandwiches and I cut the crusts off the ends because I know that they will eat them if I cut the crusts off. And then I got a bit carried away. I was like, oh, what can I do with these? And I'd already buttered the bread, right? So I made bread and butter pudding.
Hmm.
Which
I'm going to
is
say,
something, yeah, like it's honestly, it's something that I remember fondly from my childhood. And then when I made it, it's like, this is actually a bit gross.
do you remember
And
school dinners, mate? Did you ever have
yeah,
those school dinners where they used to make
yeah.
bread and butter pudding in a big black tray?
And it was like sloppy as. Yeah, really not great. So this is me thinking that I'm being like really cool and making dessert, and I gave it to my kids, and all three of them just ate the ice cream on top and left the whole bread and butter pudding.
Don't blame me, mate. Seriously,
So
I've
like
got like trauma
that's
from
got to
bread
get
and
thrown
butter
away
pudding.
now. So that's got to get thrown away. The other thing that I thought I'd be clever and do, we had a roast dinner on Monday, and they hardly ate any of it. So we had sweet potato, some green veggies, and some chicken. I blitzed all of that in my thermi, and like just bear with me here because this
All
does get
right.
better. I then added some grated cheese, made them into little patties, and fried them. They were actually
Oh,
delicious. Added a few herbs and stuff, really delicious. I was like, almost like chicken nuggets. I'll give them to the kids with ketchup. My kids were like, these are not chicken nuggets and we will not eat them. So last night, all three of them just licked ketchup off their plate for dinner.
I tell you what, they're radars. My kids, I have the same thing where like I try to make like these like healthy bars and things. They're like, oh, I'm like, and this is just like a bounty bar. They're not called bounties here, are they? But you know, they're like the coconut with the
Yeah,
chocolate
yeah,
on the
yeah.
outside. Well, I'll make like the healthy version of that. And they literally they have a radar for it and they're like, Mum, no way, I'm not eating that shit. Don't give it to me.
100%. And I feel like this nicely ties us into this week's topic that is motherhood just one big confidence crisis?
Man, I think so.
And what can we do about it? So we're going to talk about when we stop trusting ourselves and how to reclaim a bit of that swagger, mate.
Yeah, we need a bit of it back, don't we?
Yeah, we get knocked about by motherhood, don't we? And that can really knock your confidence from, your
Mm.
kids not eating to your kids making funny videos of you online. Um,
Yeah. And the expanding waistline.
the expanding waistline, yeah. And I mean, like, I'm all for that because, like, who doesn't love wearing elasticated pants? But,
Yeah,
you know, all about comfort in this stage of life, isn't it?
absolutely.
But yeah, for me, you happy for me to start this one, mate? So I'm still in that like early motherhood bit, and I just
I think so, because I think you take a really big knock in those early days, or certainly I know I did.
yeah, yeah, and I think like what I want to start talking about is that like the doubting and second guessing yourself of
Hmm.
early motherhood. Like it feels like a bit of a kick in the shins when your pre-kids confidence level like doesn't return for a very long time. And I know like from the moment Harrison was born, like I feel like there have been so many decisions to make and so many opinions that have
Yeah.
come from everywhere, whether it's, the lady in the queue at Woolworths who sees your pregnant belly and gives you some unwanted advice about birth, or
Jesus, yeah.
yeah, or you've got a tantruming toddler on the floor of the same Woolies and somebody else comes up to you and gives you some other unwanted advice. But so many decisions, so many opinions, on what to do, how to do it. I think the internet has made this so much worse because we could just Google or ask ChatGPT and we've got answers immediately that take us away from our own intuition. And it's so hard to pull back in and remember that there are loads of things that I'm good at and competent at, and there are loads of things that I'm still learning, and that's okay. And that my kids are all alive. They are fed. They are clothed when they want to be. Um, and they are loved beyond measure. And I'm doing okay. But that doesn't stop that horrid voice in my head telling me that I'm messing it up and I'm messing them up and I'm not doing it right. So let's talk about like when we first noticed that, because for me it was like probably even before my son was born, when I was pregnant and looking at birthing classes to do. When did you first notice that your confidence dropped in motherhood? Because you moved here when you were pregnant and with a toddler, so that must have been really hard.
Yeah, so I wasn't quite pregnant when I moved here, but not long after. I just wanted to say that voice in your head that my friend of mine likes to call that the itty bitty shitty committee, which I absolutely love, sums it up brilliantly. And you can imagine who the people are that would be sitting on it, like, your parents and that mum at school that seems to like know everything. Yeah, look, so it was hard. I would say, so when I had my son back in the UK, I was in a pretty good position because, and I felt reasonably confident. I think this was mostly because my mum was living around the corner, right? I've got three brothers, and my mum had four kids under the age of 5, so there's only 5 years between all four of us. So it was really good to have her experience, and I think that just gave me more confidence because, to be fair, she was never the sort of judgy kind of parent. She was always just supportive, which I think was really lovely. So, and also I don't know, like sometimes I wonder whether these things have an effect, but he was just a really chilled out baby. And sometimes I wonder, was he chilled out like because we were chilled out? And I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, what was really hard for me was when I had my daughter. So I think obviously having her in a different country, didn't know how the system works, didn't have any friends, in all honesty. Like I joined a few mums groups, but I didn't really click that much with the people in those groups. But the worst thing for me was my daughter had like terrible reflux. The first few weeks were fine, and then it sort of kicked in, and it's just a nightmare because she literally just cried all the time.
Right.
And I can remember this day where, so she'd be like sitting in the baby chair, or whatever, and I'd have like the back doors open, and she would just cry for hours and hours on end. And there was a knock on the door, and it was my neighbour, and I was thinking, oh my God, she's going to complain about the noise. And bless her, she said to me, "Oh, I just wanted to come round and see if you're okay." She said, "I'm worried about you. Obviously, I've heard the baby crying. Like, are you okay?" And I just burst into tears. But I was like, "Oh my God, thank you, beautiful neighbour." Because actually, then she sort of said to me, "Oh, have you heard of reflux? Maybe you should go and take her to the docs. Like, here's my doctor. Go and see her. She's lovely." And she had kids of her own. So grateful for that just non-judgmental sort of support in that moment, that I felt it, I did feel really useless because I didn't breastfeed my kids, but I really felt like there was nothing that I could do to soothe her, and that was quite distressing. But also the other thing is, so we got medication stuff, and that did help, but for a long time she still cried a lot. And I remember a psychologist, I don't know how much truth there is in this, telling me that sometimes that early experience can then set a pattern. I don't know how much I believe that, but she, even through to like toddlerhood, she cried a lot. And so for a long time, it felt really hard to just leave the house. My husband used to push around Balmain, and he'd go out for an hour to give me a break. And he'd come back and he's like, "Oh yeah, she just cried literally for the full hour." And he said, even he felt he found it really hard because he felt like everyone was looking at him going, "My God, what are you doing to that child?" You know, he felt really
Yeah.
judged by it as well. So yeah, that did definitely knock my confidence. But I think the other thing that I just would say is because, you know, my kids are older now, like, you know, my daughter's nearly 14, my son's nearly 18. But I think your confidence can be knocked in the later years of parenting as well. You know, I think there's so many teenage kids who are experiencing mental health problems. And I know a lot of mums who feel like somehow it's like their fault, like they've done something wrong when they haven't. And it's really, you know, that could be really crushing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I really feel that. I really feel that. And sending so much love to you as mum to a toddler and a baby that never stopped crying in a new
Yeah,
country. Like that sounds really, really hard.
yeah,
Um,
it was. It was.
really awful. And I know a lot of other mums like us, you know, we're expats, we don't have that family support over here, and it is hard to find a network. And it's especially hard when you've got a baby that, yeah, that
Right.
cries all the time, or that you just can't really do anything with.
Yeah.
So I was in some ways lucky. I didn't have refluxy babies. They were fairly easy during the day, and I'd strap them to me and go out. But mine were, all three of them have been non-sleepers at night. So, you know, I was in a pattern of being woken up every 2 hours, for all of them for their first year. For the whole of that first year. And then, you know, as I multiplied the number of children, you know, multiplied the number of wake ups, because the toddler was still waking when the baby was waking, you know, in between the baby waking. The preschooler was waking when the baby was waking, and the toddler was waking when the preschooler woke up. So it's
But
honestly,
you were basically just awake the whole time.
it's pretty much it. I was a zombie. Honestly,
Yeah.
for years and years and years. And it's only in the last couple of months that I've consistently been getting decent chunks of sleep for most of the week. And it's certainly not every night, but it's getting to a stage where I have noticed an improvement in my mental health because of the restful sleep that I'm getting.
Yeah.
So, I get like that, you know, that whole stage is really hard, and your self-confidence is low when you're tired. You know, your ability to rationalize is not really there.
Yeah.
So yeah, certainly those really early years when you're sleep deprived and you feel like you don't know what you're doing is really hard. I'm now at a stage where society deems that my children are old enough to be polite and well behaved in public. And if you've met my kids, which you have, you know that they are very free spirited.
Yeah.
They like to liberally use the F word if they aren't getting enough of my attention. And sadly, that F word is not feminism.
And what didn't your son called me a butt face the other day?
Butthole.
Butthole.
Butthole. Yeah, yeah, that's
Butthole.
the favourite thing at the moment. I think my daughter has also called you that. And they are now trying to teach the baby to say butthole. So,
Do you know what? I'm all right with it because my daughter calls me a butthole as well, along
oh,
with other
so
things. Old lady, that's what she likes to call me as well, because she knows
bless.
she knows it. She really knows what
How to
grates.
how to push your buttons, yeah.
Yeah.
But on the mental health thing, can we talk about the having teens and the confidence knock that happens when they start making poor choices, you know? And Lise, I think your kids are angels, really. But like,
You don't know them, Hannah.
well, that's,
You
I was going
don't
to say,
know them, mate.
exactly. But let's talk about, you know, when they start asserting their independence, they start doing things that are not great. We kind of shrink into ourselves. We believe it's our fault, you know, that it's our poor parenting, and that knocks our confidence. But really, like, it's such a normal stage of development. And we remember being teens and pushing away from our parents as well. And I think like this is really a stage, because I've got teen stepkids as well. It's a stage where mums just stop talking about this stuff and they really go into themselves and feel a big sense of shame about it, when
Yeah.
actually maybe if we opened up more and talked more about the experiences that our teens are having, we would realize that it's fairly normal in terms of development. Kids are going to do silly things. They're going to drink and try drugs and do reckless things that teenagers do, and that doesn't reflect on us. really.
It's so, yeah, I mean, you touched on a really interesting point, and touch wood, I haven't had like major dramas with my well, so far, right? Okay, I've got a teenage daughter who's 14, so we'll hold judgment on that. But I think sometimes even it can be like little things, like teenage boys can be quite, and I remember this from my brothers as well. Like they can be really like quite confident or
Mhm.
arrogant, as you might say. And I know sometimes I've worried about that because I think, oh, is he going to be like that with it? Like he'll say things to us, and I think, oh my God, if he said that to like somebody else, that sounds really like arrogant and sort of. And I've had to have like a real word with myself because it really, sometimes it really presses my buttons, and I find myself
Mm,
getting really uptight about, oh my God, like you can't talk like that. But I really felt this in my body. I was sitting at the dinner table one day and I thought, why am I getting so tense about this? And I sat with it for a while and I realized that it was ultimately driven by my own fear of being judged by other people. So like, we don't want that judgment to come back to us because it's we feel like it's a result of our parenting, right? But the reality is, and I've seen this with some of my friends, like you can beat yourself up that like, oh, something's happened to my kid, or like they're struggling with this and it's all my fault, like I must have done something wrong. But the
yeah.
reality is, by the time kids hit teenager dumb, I think I just made that word up. Is
I
that a
will go
word?
with it.
You're
Go
the
at it.
English. You're the English guru over there. Yes, Tina. I can't even say it now. That thing, right? Their exposure is so vast and wide, like, and particularly with social media and friends, and there's just stuff that is like so out of your control. And also, I think because of what we see out there portrayed to us all the time, everybody's filtering, everybody's got the highlight reel. It's like builds this perception that like your kids need to be perfect all the time, and that you sort of lose that sense of actually like they're on a journey, they're on a life journey, and you know they're going to develop over time, and they have to go through their own lessons in life, just like we're going through our own lessons. So, and I thought, yeah, I need to just let this go. Like, I shouldn't be feeling, I might feel it, but I just need to let it go because at the end of the day, he's going to have his own, he's nearly 18. He's going to go out into the big wide world. And if he is arrogant, well, he's gonna that's gonna come to bite him down the line. He's gonna have to learn that lesson himself. And in all honesty, as my husband pointed out, like, teenage boys can be quite arrogant, and they can be risk takers, and they can, I think there was something about, I remember reading about like they're the highest insurance category for driving cars because they're something to do with their prefrontal
Frontal
cortex
cortex. Yeah.
isn't
It's not
developed
developed.
in relation to risk, so they take more risks and things like that. So it's like, sometimes I think we just have to let go and like trust that we've done the best job that we've been able to do with the tools that we've got, and not beat ourselves up, you know?
For sure. For sure. And I think trust is a really big one, isn't it? I've got those two, stages of very young children and teens. And we've got one in uni now. And, he very much, does his own thing. And we can guide him a little bit if he asks for guidance, but he often doesn't. And that's
Yeah.
okay because he's on his own path, which is cool. But yeah, you have just got to trust that they're going to go out there and they're going to live their lives how they want. They're going to learn things, they're going to grow. And that's cool. What I wanted to talk about was trusting, that my confidence has been knocked by trusting too much in other people. And by other people, I mean like stuff that I've read online and listening to people who, to quote Brené Brown, who quotes Teddy Roosevelt, maybe, who aren't in the arena. People who aren't in the arena with you, And when my son was born, he spent his first 4 days in NICU. And I was really intent on exclusively breastfeeding my children, and that was, to me, that was the pinnacle of good parenting. And I now know that is not true, but I had just got this image in my head that I was going to find breastfeeding really easy and that it was going to be beautiful and this was going to be how I'd bond with my baby. And like that just wasn't how it worked. You know, we were separated for a long time. I was very ill after the birth. My milk didn't come in. He was formula fed in the hospital, and then he was mixed fed with formula and breast milk for the first 6 months of his life. And you know, and he's 5 and he's absolutely fine. You know, like, you know, you didn't breastfeed your children, that, you know, formula is not the enemy, right? But I had got it into my head that I was a bad parent if I did that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hadn't met my own expectations, and therefore, you know, I shouldn't feel confident that I knew how to look after my child. You know, I would cry pumping milk. Like, it was all, I didn't respond to breast pumps at all. I spent hundreds of dollars on multiple breast pumps and I'd get like a teeny amount of milk, and I would just shred myself and tell myself that I wasn't enough for him and that I was doing a bad job. And I just found it really hard to accept the reality of where we were, that he was being nourished partly by breast milk and partly by formula. And that was, you know, and that was fine. It's the expectation, the preset expectations that I'd had were not the reality. But
But it's interesting how often it's not just your own thinking about that, like it's other people's thinkings. Because I was really glad when, so I tried to breastfeed the first time round, and it was just a disaster. In all honesty, it was distressing, incredibly distressing for me and for my son, who was an incredibly hungry baby as well. I actually remember going into the chemist to say, "Do these bottles? Is this like the biggest size?" Because he would literally like the whole, like, he was, yeah, just a milk monster. But I was so grateful that when I had my daughter, because I'd already sort of thought, I'll try again, but I'm going to prepare myself. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, look, you just need to know that if you want to give your baby formula in the hospital, you have to sign a form." And we called it the bad mother form. And I was so glad that she told me, because it, like, that was actually really crushing, because it was like literally saying, you felt like you're saying, I'm signing off to give my child something that's like poisonous or something.
yeah,
And so, you know, again, it's that. And I don't know, I don't know what it was. Again, I think in the UK, I don't never felt the same sort of pressure in the UK, but I think I just noticed when I came to Australia, there was a much more push for breastfeeding. Like, I honestly think in the hospital in the UK, they couldn't care less whether which you did. You know, if you wanted to breastfeed, they would be there to sort of support you and all the rest of it. But it wasn't as a bigger deal. But, and again, going back to my mum, like my mum didn't breastfeed, so that also helped as well, because there was no judgment
yeah.
coming from her either.
And I think, you know, on the other hand, my mum did exclusively breastfeed, so my expectation was that I would do
Yeah.
that. I also have a bone to pick here. Mum, I love you so much, but you told me that you had short labours so many times that I was like, cool, labour's only going to be 3 hours. You know, well, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy not to trust yourself. And I just love that you know, the second time round, you knew that you weren't going to persevere with breastfeeding because it hadn't worked the first time. And
Yeah.
I think like that acceptance is really hard for us. And you know, even when you had your kids, like social media wasn't quite as widespread as it is now. There wasn't as much online information at your fingertips. You weren't scrolling reels on Instagram that were, you know, putting this stuff in your face all the time.
Yeah.
But I feel like, you know, a lot of that confidence comes down to that cultural conditioning that we have to ignore our own intuition,
Hmm.
especially as mothers and as women. I just think it's like something that I'm really passionate about. And look, we've got to the middle of the podcast now, so I feel like this is the right time to bring up what, you know, what we do pretty much every week, that, you know, the cultural conditioning is like from our families of origin, it's from the media, it's from society at large. And what that says in motherhood is to trust medical professionals, and now Google or even ChatGPT, more than we trust ourselves. And I'm absolutely not saying that you shouldn't go to a doctor, you know, or anything like that. But I really think that with our own babies and our own children, we hand over a lot of our power without realizing it when we don't advocate for ourselves and for our kids. And so I love that you advocated for yourself in the hospital when you had your daughter, because you didn't want to go through a traumatic experience again. And actually, we now know that the biggest predictor of children's happiness is them own mothers' strong mental health. And it's just, it's so important. And I think like we could do a whole episode about how women especially and mothers are ignored and gaslit by everybody, but especially in the medical community. And again, this is going to make me unpopular, but that hasn't really stopped me before. As a little anecdote, during the summer, my middle daughter, just before she was not quite 3, developed a cough that was a really violent cough that made her vomit. And then after she'd vomited, she was fine. But it was just a really horrible, like, hacking cough. And every time, like, she had some water or, like, after a breakfast, she'd cough and she'd vomit. And after a few days of this, I took her to the doctor. And the doctor said that it's really common that toddlers have a really active gag reflex. And she sent us home. And 2 weeks later, she was still vomiting after every cough. And I had changed the bed sheets a couple of times a day. It was gross. And I'm sure a lot of people listening will be like screaming now, going, we know what it is. It was whooping cough, which highly contagious, right? And by the time we'd got the diagnosis, she was already out of the contagious period, but she'd given it to the other 2. And so we then spent 3 weeks in isolation at home, cleaning up more bed sheets, and they were fine within themselves, other than the really, really violent cough. But the first time we went to the doctor, I didn't push for them to do any testing, or I just went, oh, okay, well, she probably knows best. And I
Yeah.
knew in my gut that that wasn't right, and there was something else going on, but I trusted her instead of trusting myself. And I don't really need to labor that point, but I feel like this happens a lot, that we just hand over that trust,
Yeah.
and that then erodes our confidence. And like, honestly, I felt horrible. I felt like a terrible mother for not realizing that that was the case. But also, I could have saved her 2 weeks of pain and got that sorted much quicker.
Mm,
So, and I'm sure every woman has a story like that, whether it's from
yeah.
their antenatal care, their birth, their postnatal care, or lack of it. And then every time you ask a health professional something, or you might have niggles yourself. With my Hashimoto's, I was just told that I was tired because I had a baby and a toddler. I was like, but my
Mm,
hair's falling out in clumps and my nails are brittle and I feel terrible all the time. But you have to fight to get heard. And
yeah.
so that erodes your confidence. And then you think, maybe I don't know myself. Maybe I don't know my child.
Yeah. And also it's that thing of like, you can end up feeling like you're like a hypochondriac. Like you actually start to question like, oh, actually, is this me? Like, am I like, you know,
Am I the issue?
yeah,
And I think like that confidence thing then gets, the lack of confidence then gets compounded as they get older. Because yes, there is that like that golden stage, once they can wipe their own bottoms, I find like that,
God, yes, brilliant.
when it was like, I can't wait till everybody's toilet trained in my house. It's going to be great.
I just have to say this quickly, talking about social media, which I try not to scroll to on very much, but I don't know, yesterday I was on there for something, and I saw this clip, and it was in China, I think it was. And it was like a kid, room full of toddlers, and there was this lady, and she had like a fake bum on. And she was literally, they had this song going, and then she was like showing them how to wipe with it every time it went to the wipe bit. I was like, that's genius.
Honestly. Honestly. But then the confidence thing, right? Social media, you can buy courses now on how to potty train your children. Like, as if we haven't been, toilet training kids forever. Like all kids learn to use the toilet, just like all kids eventually learn to sleep. That there's so many things that, we're made to feel like we don't know enough about, when
It's like,
actually we don't need to.
yeah, you kind of work it out yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's
Too
the
much information.
way too much information. And then for anybody who's got more than one child, you feel
Jeez.
like, you've kept one alive for 2 or 3 years, and then you have another one and you go, okay, cool, I've done this before. It wasn't really that bad. I know what I'm doing now. I've worked it out. And then you have another one that's, from birth got an entirely different personality, entirely different sleep schedule, and everything changes again. And I think that then, can make it harder when you,
Totally, mate. Totally. I totally agree. I think it's really hard for us as mothers in this period that we live in because there's just so much noise out there, right?
so
Like
much noise. Yeah, yeah.
everything to do with motherhood is some kind of a problem that needs solving, that somebody needs to sell you something for. I mean, could that be further away from like the naturalness of like motherhood and like our sort of femininity and our like this is why we're here, right? Like, well, part of why we're here. And let's be fair, a lot of the stuff out there we like to call bollocks on stuff, and
Yeah,
there is a lot of bollocks out there. When I look back now, particularly to those early years, I really wish that I'd been braver to trust myself a lot more, and like tune into that intuition. I feel like that trying to conform to a lot of what was out there was actually more damaging for my kids than just trusting that what I knew and felt was right for each of them, when the time came. I can remember being so stressed out when my youngest was struggling with bedwetting. It felt like it went on forever. And it was kind of like, in school, and then it was like there was going to be camps and things like that. And like, I was so stressed about it. And I literally, went to see all these therapists, spent like literally thousands of dollars. And, I can remember like going to this pelvic floor bloody woman and you're thinking, and I was sitting in that room thinking, I'm not being funny, but you can't teach a 6-year-old pelvic floor muscle exercise. I mean, I'm like a nearly 50-year-old woman and I still can't isolate my pelvic floor myself. Like, come on, like, how's a 6-year-old going to be able to do that? And then, like, the reality
yeah,
was, like, the hormone eventually kicked in, the one that, like, switches on. And it was like literally overnight, she just stopped doing it. But, it was like this sense of if my child doesn't hit this thing, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that there aren't things that are true medical problems and
yeah, yeah,
stuff, but seem to make a lot of stuff a medical problem. I think sometimes sometimes when it's not, and it's actually just individual kids are, they're on their own timeline. They're all individuals. Like they're all, different characters, different abilities, like different everything. But we try to like squeeze everything into a box of like what what the perfect should be. And we think we have to give them all these experiences and we have to do all this. And like, it is no wonder that like motherhood is pretty challenging. So I think letting go of that need to try to control everything so tightly
yeah,
helps us to bring a bit more ease, push out a bit more of the stress and gain more confidence and an ability to just when you can shut that stuff out and sort of come back into yourself, you can start to, you can start to access your intuition a bit more. And I think unfortunately, in the world that we live in at the moment, it's quite hard to do that because of the bombardment of information that's out there.
yeah, for sure. And not really knowing whether any of that is legit or not. Yeah, I really like everything you just said there. It's the let it go of control. And I think the also, yeah, those milestones, like you say, you have your first baby. I used to have an app and I can't remember what it's called. And I'm glad I can't remember what it's called because it made my life misery. It was an app to track feeds and sleep and nappy changes. And so I was in the app all day long and I was timing exactly how long he would breastfeed for on each side. And then I was stopping the timer and my anxiety was just sky high. And then we started, with a sleep training app, but it wasn't called sleep training because that's not cool anymore. It was, you know,
Oh
something that
yeah,
would
I did
support
the whole
me.
sleep training. There was some I can't remember. There was some woman that had this. It was a bit controversial at the time. I don't know whether maybe it had died off by the time but it was all about the controlled crying and everyone was going on about it. Do you remember that, that
Yeah,
might have
so
been?
control. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's still a thing that people talk about, like, whether you should do that or not. And like, honestly, just I don't care how
Just
you
do
get
what you
kids to sleep,
feels
to be
right
honest.
for your
Like,
kid. Yeah.
do what feels right for you. But, between that sleep app and the one where I was tracking everything, you know, I just felt terrible all the time. And I think the best thing I did when I had my second child was I'd already deleted those apps and I wasn't getting them back, and I just trusted that I would know when my baby was hungry. She would tell me when she was hungry, and
Yeah.
when she needed to sleep, she would sleep. And by the time I've had my third, and I'm sure lots of, third time moms will appreciate this, your third just they sleep when they sleep, they eat when they eat, and
Yeah.
you just know that you don't need those apps, you don't need those programs. But we just live in a world that's constantly telling us that we do and we need them now. And that we're, tapping into that, that marketing thing of make them feel like they're not good enough, so they buy something. And that letting go of the control, because let's be honest, most of us who are having kids in our 30s have got quite far up in our careers by that point. We're, had quite a large element of control over our lives. And then
Yeah.
you have a baby and all of that goes and it's
Yeah.
unpredictable and you can't control things in the same way. And can we just
No.
say like that's enough?
And I think, you know that like my whole mantra for life is like let go. Like I literally think our the reason we're here is to learn the lesson of letting go.
Yeah.
Like, and it's in my work with clutter and all the rest of it. But it's like, ultimately we have to let go at the end, right? Because we can't live forever, And this is just another thing. It's like, I think like when we're trying to move through life, trying to control everything, like trying to control kids is just like, you're just creating more pain for yourself. Like, I'm not saying don't put routine and structure and things around, but it's like just having that ability to be, yeah, well, it didn't quite go to plan. So we'll just move with it. We'll just flex with it. We'll try this. But like, I think when we're trying to control it all and it's like, they didn't do this and they didn't fit this thing and they didn't like, we're just creating tension, anxiety, and pain like for
Yeah,
ourselves. So I
for
think
sure.
like we just all got to get better at letting go, like having a bit more ease. So
Yeah.
I think that runs us into the shit tip of the week, really, doesn't it, Hannah? Which is probably along a similar theme. So, what's your hot shit tip of the week? That's a bit of a
A shit tip
mouthful.
of the week.
Hot shit tip of the week.
Yeah, well, mine is basically what we were just talking about. It's just remember that you're running your own race. Stop the comparison trap. And a mantra that I have, other than it's just a phase, and for fuck's sake, um, is sorry, Mum, I'll stop swearing so much.
No,
Is
I
to
got
just
told
remind.
off for that last week.
Did
My
you?
mum listened to our podcast, not last week. There's the one before. She said
Nearly
she
50
was.
years old and still being told off by your mum.
I
But
know.
it's that remembering that I am the best mum for my kids, and
Yeah,
believing that I am the best mum for my kids. And if I can just keep repeat that I am the best mum for my kids, and that's enough. That's
it
enough.
is. It
What's
is, mate.
yours?
But look, mine very similar, really. I think that the next time that you think there's some problem to fix with your kids, like I think just pausing for a moment and checking in whether is this actually really a problem or and also I think we've become so reliant on asking for the opinion of others. Like, so I see it, I do a lot of eye rolling when I see people posting questions on Facebook groups and stuff, and I do get it because I think sometimes you can feel a bit lonely and there's a
Mm,
whole you think, well, there's all these mums there, they're going to be able to give me advice. But I think by doing that sometimes it actually makes it worse because, like every single mum out there is going to probably have a different opinion and and some people are a bit judgy. And like, so, do you really need to get like 50 comments from 50 different mums about how they do it? Or like you say, are you better off actually just taking a quiet moment and, doing the thing that feels right for you? I mean, by all means, if you literally have no clue about something and it's something that you've never, then I think doing a bit of research, no issue with that. But it's like, I just don't think you need to gather the opinion of all these different people. I just believe that, like, exactly like you said, you are the right mum. What you feel in your heart for your own children is most likely the right path.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That's
Oh,
nice, isn't it?
what a beautiful message. What a beautiful message, Lise. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening to us. Next time, we're going to talk about perimenopause and parenting. We've mentioned it a few times. You might
Yeah.
notice that we're, both at different ends of that scale. So looking forward to that chat. In the meantime, please like, follow, subscribe, give us a cheeky 5-star review, and share with your mum mates. So we'll
Who
see you
needs your
next time.
laugh?
Yeah.
See you next time.
That's it for today's Motherhood Shit Show. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and share with a mum mate who needs a laugh.
Until next time, remember, you're not failing, you're just in the middle of the shit show, same as us.